My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. I'm a big fan of foliage and I'm also a big fan of perennials. And in this video, we're going to feature a plant that has both of those characteristics, and that is ferns. You see behind me these beautiful ferns. They erupt in springtime with fresh new foliage. And traditionally, we think of them as a plant for a shady area, but there is a very, very wide range of ferns. Some of them can take full sun, some of them can be grown in pots. But if you want a long-term interest in a plant, you can't go far wrong than by growing ferns in your yard. Now, there's a few attributes that I think make ferns stand out. They do photosynthesize naturally, that's why they're a plant. But more importantly, they reproduce by underground roots, and they can spread to make a nice dense carpet. But they also will put spores into the air, and those spores can then germinate new plants. So a little bit different, and that means that they don't have traditional flowers. They have other appendages, and you'll see those in the video, that put out the spores. But there is a fern for everybody. There's a fern for every situation. And really what I want to impress upon you is that ferns, choose the right ferns, and they are very, very carefree. They don't need a lot of time and attention, and they will pretty much take care of themselves. It's a wonderful plant, and if you like hostas, I'm sure you'll like ferns because the foliage is so striking and so robust. Ferns come in all sorts of heights, from just a few inches high to the taller ones you see behind me here. But what I really want to point out to you is that they are perfectly set up for growing in a woodland environment. Down here we've got these very, very tough, wiry stems, and then the foliage starts, and then you get this beautiful, tall, arching growth. These start as a little round pinwheel low down to the ground, and it gradually turns and rotates as it grows. Now, as regards growing ferns, they're widely available. You need to do some research to find out which varieties are best for your situation, but very tough, very hardy. We're a zone 7P here in Connecticut in the Northeast, and there are, I don't know about hundreds, but there's no shortage of plants that you can grow. So there's definitely a fern for your situation. But when it comes to growing it, I really would encourage you to put in a grove. Don't buy one of this and one of that and one of something else. You need to buy a large number. And I've mentioned plugs in the past. Plugs are a great way to buy a high quantity of small plants. And there are some nurseries that will now sell these over the internet, and they'll do the mail order to you. So buy 3, buy 5, buy 7, buy 27. Don't buy one. And put them so that they can start to grow together as a single planting. And when the dappled sunshine comes through the trees and they light up, it really is a very, very beautiful sight. So ferns are the subject of this video. I've got some footage that I want to share with you to explain to you why they're so special. Let's go. Let's go shopping for ferns and see what we can find. Now, as with many plants, garden centres and nurseries don't stock all the ferns all the time in all the sizes. So it may be that you add some ferns in springtime, then in summer you find a few others, and then you add those, and then you also add some in the fall or the autumn. You can see here we've got all sorts of foliage shapes. This is that little pinwheel I mentioned earlier. Beautiful architecture. And if you look at these ferns when they start to grow, it is nature at its absolute finest. Always amazed at how they change so quickly from when they start to emerge to just a few weeks later, how dense they are. And this is a beautiful one called Adiantum. Hardy, but difficult to find. I was delighted to find this in a local nursery. And this will come back year in, year out with this very, very beautiful foliage. And like I said earlier, don't buy one, buy all of them and plant a grove. They really are that special. The heights and the shapes and the diversity within ferns really is second to none. And if you start collecting, you'll have a lot of fun. I find myself drawn to watching how plants grow, and when it comes to growing ferns, these are just as appealing as many of the other plants that I grow in my garden. Unfortunately, I don't have space, but I can observe these in a local area where we've got public access. And there's this beautiful woodland, and you can go in there early spring and start to see these completely uncared for ferns in their natural environment in dappled shade emerge after their winter slumber. It really is quite gorgeous. And what I want to impress upon you is the architectural and the engineering of these plants. They move in the wind, they've got a very thick, robust stem, and they can get up to a height. This is the cinnamon fern, these get 3, maybe 4 feet tall. Then they start to arch over so that they are above any undergrowth and they can get enough sunlight. What is really impressive to me is this is that same patch as you just saw, but 10 days later. And look how they've filled out. Here you can see the spore-carrying body starting to develop, and they're very easy to push through a thick layer of leaves. So this needs no help whatsoever. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is that left to their own devices, ferns really can take care of themselves. Now, it may be that in the fall you need to give them a bit of a cutback. That's it. You don't need to do anything else. Now, in a residential planting setting, such as you see here, there's actually a collection of different plants in close proximity. And I love the layered look. We've got one there, the cinnamon fern, that's 3 feet or so high. And then we come through to some anthuriums. And here we have the beautiful Japanese painted fern. Just look at that. Surprisingly wiry, but when you look at it, it's quite delicate and quite gentle. And if you have this as ground cover, you don't need to mulch, you don't need to weed. It really is a labor-saving planting. Now, these are best planted with a little bit of afternoon shade. There are some ferns that will take the full sun. Denostadia, the hay-scented fern in particular, is good in a much brighter environment. But I'm sure there's a little corner somewhere where you could plant some ferns and watch this remarkable growth every single spring and summer. This is a residential planting at the base of an old dry stone wall, and somebody had the foresight to plant cinnamon fern and a few others in kind of a tapestry. We've got a high, the cinnamon, which is 3 to 4 feet high, and there's a mid-level fern, and then there's a much lower one. And it's got trees just behind the stone wall, so it is shaded. But I drive past this, and quite frequently, and every springtime, I'm just drawn to this tapestry. And it's a really good habit to get into doing, and that is observing what other people plant in their gardens and see if it thrives. You can readily understand that these plants are thriving here, so that they would absolutely grow in your area if that's something that you're interested in. But then we have to go one step further and just look at planting that is naturalized. And here we have a large glade of ferns all by itself without any help whatsoever. And you know that some of these are plants that have grown through the ground with roots, and some of them will also be spore grown. But this is not getting any care, any attention whatsoever, and this is what you are rewarded with. So let's leave it there. I think I made my case for ferns. Go out, have a look, choose some beautiful varieties, get the texture, the tapestry, the colors, the heights, all of it. They really are that special. That's it for now.